What's something a teacher did at school that you're still mad about? A boy in my class, about 8 years old, had dyslexia. So one time, the teacher gave a dictation. He had spelled all the words wrong and she was really mad at him, just shouting to him in the middle of the class that he should have tried harder. He didn't do well enough etc. He was crying, and from that moment on I really hated her. Some teacher called me a waste of time and space during the end of school performance because I was too shy to sing. I didn't pick a singing role. I was like 10-11 years old. When I was in 5th grade and my little sister was in 2nd grade, she wanted to pick some apple blossoms for her teacher. When she presented the little bouquet to her teacher, the teacher flipped out, lectured her for 10 minutes about why she shouldn't go on people's lawns to pick flowers, then threw the blossoms away in front of her. My sister was devastated, and I found her on the playground, crying. The apple blossoms were from our apple tree, in our front yard. First and last time I had ever yelled at a teacher. Totally worth the office referral. They thought I was doing coke in class at the age of 14. Still bitter about that 5-day in-school suspension. Homework in 2nd grade was to learn our parents' real names instead of mom and dad. I came in and told the class my mom had a different last name than me. The teacher said no. Her last name is Jutsu like yours and your daddy. That's what happens when you get married. I told her that it was just me and my mom and that my daddy never lived with us. She told the class that meant they needed to pray for me and my mommy because we were going to hell. That was my last day at that school. I went to a high school that had a uniform. We were supposed to have our shirts tucked in at all times. I was walking into English class, between bells, tucking in my shirt because it came up out of my skirt while I was taking my cardigan off. My English teacher stopped me and asked, "Were you just tucking your shirt in?" I told her I was, and she promptly wrote me up for having had my shirt untucked. It was utter bullet and I lost total respect for her. Little me was obsessed with two things: dinosaurs until I saw Jurassic Park, and space. I was obsessed. In 3rd grade we had an assignment where we had to talk about orbits. I wrote examples like the moon orbits the earth orbits the sun, and the sun orbits the Milky Way. My teacher gave me a D and refused to listen to me that what I had said was true. We didn't have computers in the classroom, so there was no way to look it up. I tried to bring a book with it the next day, but she blew me off. Joke's on her though, because I'm about to get my PhD in astronomy. Edit. I wasn't quite clear in what I wrote. She didn't believe the sun orbiting around the center of the Milky Way. She wasn't anti-Copernican. Graded the boys and girls differently. She was my middle school history and speech teacher, and we knew she was grading the boys much more harshly than the girls. We couldn't prove it while I was at that school, but we knew. A couple years after my class graduated, a group of students who had the same thoughts set her up in a grading sting. Essentially, 2 boys and 2 girls wrote the same paper for an assignment. Not literally the same, because that would have been cheating, but they all argued the same points in the same way, just with different wording and structure in their papers. The boys got C's and the girls got A's. They took the papers to the headmaster and had him read them with all of this in mind. She was asked to resign shortly thereafter. What still pisses me off is that nobody believed us when I was in school there. It was a serious source of stress for me then too, since I was very motivated by my grades and just could not figure out why I was struggling so much with her classes. Told me that I wasn't worthy of anyone's respect, broke a kid's phone and lied about it to assistant principals, yelled at my choir director for playing the piano while there was AP testing going on, when it was her first year at the school and many of her students were present. The list goes on and on. Duck that guy. In biology class, the teacher was teaching about DNA. He wanted to give us a sense of the overwhelming number of combinations a DNA strand can have. So he created a simplified version. Picture a strand of DNA as if it's a ladder. This ladder has 6 rungs, and each rung is either red or blue. How many different possible ladders are there? We separated into groups to answer this question, and the first table to get it right gets 5 extra points on the next quiz. I raise my hand and say the answer is 64. He says no, the answer is in the billions. I say no, it's 64. He tells me to sit down and continues with the lesson. No one gets any points. I go home and literally type out every possible options. I print it out and give it to him. It's a document that looks like this. 0000000 0000001 0000010 0000011. I show it to him. He says he's impressed with the work I did, but that my answer is wrong. But he'll give me the 5 extra points anyway. So goddamned frustrating. Later on he tells me he asked the AP chemistry teacher and it turns out I was right. Edit. Fixed some details. In about 1966 when I was 6 while our class was making some sort of valentines with multiple folds on which we were supposed to write little Valentine's Day messages. The teacher was wandering between the desks while scanning our projects. At one point I guess I had written on the wrong side of one of the folds. So she stopped at my desk, grabbed my hand and slammed it down forcefully on the desktop. It hurt and was very embarrassing. Duck her. I hope the 54 years she has lived since then have been miserable. My 6th grade history teacher would clip his toenails in class. Now I have a foot phobia. Primary school teacher asked me what the biggest number possible is. I said numbers go on forever so there is no biggest number. My dad had told me that fact and it was interesting so I remembered it. The teacher told me that was stupid and proceeded to grab one of the really cheap school calculators and type in as many 9s as could fit on the display. She then held it up in my face and said there, that's the biggest number there is. That still annoys me to this day. The teacher got up in the middle of my presentation, took my paper out of my hand, and in front of the entire class told me that I had plagiarized my assignment from the internet. The thing is, we didn't have the internet at that time at my house. I had worked through the entire assignment while talking about my ideas with my dad. It was super embarrassing. Made me feel better to learn that the next day my dad went into class and yelled at the teacher in the staff room in front of all his peers. I didn't have a problem with that teacher after that. Last grade in high school there was a chemistry teacher in my school who had 2 different sections of the same class, both with too many students due to amazing provincial budget management. My class. This guy routinely called the dumb kids up to the board and made them sweat in front of everyone when they clearly didn't have an answer. Shouted at kids who didn't study, and was generally being an angry D. It was normal for kids to just walk away to drop out of it when we shuttled between the classroom and lab. I wasn't one of the dumb kids, so I didn't get much direct abuse. But I ended up dropping because I was sick of being constantly stressed and angry. At first I figured he was just being an asshole to clear out the extra students and I hated him for that. But I could at least understand that he was put in a bad position. I later found out about the other class, overloaded with kids, like mine was, but no angry outbursts. He played music during quiet study times, and generally treated everyone nicely. The guy was running a ducking experiment without telling anyone. 26 years later, I'm still pissed off when I see him around the community. Edit. Typo. On the last day of school my homeroom teacher took me out into the hall and told me she thought it was her moral obligation to tell me I'm a horrible person. No specifics. No advice. Just I'm a horrible person. I was never in trouble in school. Always tried my best to be kind. And was even the valedictorian. I spent the rest of the period pretending I wasn't crying because my friends still had a final in the afternoon they were studying for and needed to pass. I told a friend that it would be funny if we put a kick me sign on my brother's back. So she did it. The teacher caught her and my friend got scared and said that I made her do it, having a known sibling rivalry with him. I got the punishment instead of her. I never told her to do it. I only said it would be funny because kick me signs are funny in cartoons. The teacher made me stand in front of the whole class with my hands behind my head while everyone else got to kick me as hard as they wanted for 2 minutes. A whole group of relentless 8-10-year-old children gathered around me and kicked me as many times as they wanted to. As hard as they wanted to. Why? Because they were allowed to. And it was probably pretty fun to be on their side of the situation. I never told my parents because I was afraid of getting in trouble a second time. And I felt like that had been punishment enough. TLDR. Teacher let the entire class kick me as hard as they could for 2 full minutes. I had a friend in college who really went above and beyond on a programming assignment. She thought of everything. Part of the teacher's test was trying to break the program. Done in class as a presentation thing. The teacher couldn't break it and marked her down for not following the rules. What my friends did was outside the scope of what was required, but nowhere in the rules did say not to, and if anything should have been given extra points for really digging in and learning more. I was a child education major at a community college. I wanted to be an elementary teacher like my mom, and one day in English class my teacher was going around doing an icebreaker where everybody stands up and says their major. Well, when I told him mine was elementary education, he asked why, and I said because I love kids, and he replied, well, so did Michael Jackson. Let's just say I dropped out after that. I took a very difficult chemistry class in high school. The kind where only one student gets an A and you work your ass off to get a B. I had maintained a B for most of the year. When I forgot to write my name on a test, teacher was an extreme hard-ass and gave me a 0 for not writing my name, which brought my grade down to an F. To get my grade back up, he allowed me to ask for extra quizzes for the entire class. And every time we'd have the quiz he would announce to the class that it was because of me and they could all thank me. God, the revenge fantasies I had to get him back. I was terrible at maths as I'd been moved up to the top class and couldn't keep up. The teacher knew I was a donkey and would always ask me a sit-o, make sure I'm listening, yet would laugh along with everyone else when I didn't know an answer or would get it wrong. Giving me a C on my final exam in maths equals more than my grade in maths became C. When I was 2 points from B. Would have gotten the points if my handwriting had been clearer. The teacher couldn't see that my answer was correct and therefore never gave me the points. I notified the teacher of this, but since he only corrects one mistake, that would make the person's grade higher if corrected each semester. He didn't want to fix it. He gladly removed points when he noticed that he shouldn't have given them though. A classmate of mine went from A to B in this manner. Edit. Changed since he only corrects one person's score to only corrects one mistake. For clarity, added last sentence and fixed some typos. Ignore that. I got bullied for 5 years and said I should tell them if it happened again. A college professor in 2017. Someone mentioned an African country during discussion. Prof turned to the only black person in our class and said, maybe X knows about that? The guy stared at the professor in disbelief and replied, I'm from Germany. I have numerous stories from when I was younger of teachers stepping over their boundaries and being just terrible people. It is hard to pick just one. I just remember how it all started with my 6th grade teacher who would routinely put down an autistic student who was struggling with raising her hand and forgetting the answer to a question, telling her that she didn't have to raise her hand every time that she breathed. As a response, I told the principal and my teacher ended up finding out it was me who told on her, so she pulled me out of class and told me, don't you ever tell the principal about my teaching methods. To make the story even better, my family knew her mother-in-law and her mother-in-law hated her since she, my teacher, was notorious for throwing tantrums when her husband didn't do what she wanted. My English teacher in high school was the most disorganized person ever. She always had it laying all over her classroom and never knew where anything was. She lost multiple students' papers all the time. One day she lost my paper and told me I didn't turn it in, and I argued with her that I absolutely did. She wasn't having it, so I got up in the middle of class, said, "This is ducking bullet," and walked out. She called my math teacher, as that was my following class, and told me that she found my paper. It was a frustrating victory. Not my teacher but my wife's teacher said she wouldn't amount to anything in life because she'd cry in kindergarten. She's a chief counsel advisor corporate lawyer now lol. Science teacher was a lazy that didn't even interact with us in any way. She'd write page numbers from a textbook on the whiteboard and not even talk to us until the inspectors came, of course, when she'd have a wonderful interactive lesson planned for us. I was old enough to realize this was bullet and refused to do any work unless she actually asked us to do so with her own ducking mouth. This went on until she got my parents involved. I told them everything, and they had a chat to the head about her. I don't know if anything came of it. Had a teacher in high school science that made a girl cry for not picking up a pencil to write notes. When I said he was being extreme, he asked if I was her protector. One teacher gave me 4 detentions in a year for fighting when I was in 5th grade. I 100% was getting my ass kicked every time. That teacher was a piece of garbage. I had a math teacher in grade 8 that got fired for telling a Native American to go hunt buffalo. They said her leave was related to family problems, but everyone knew. I had a 2nd grade teacher, Miss B, that I just didn't like, and she didn't really like me either. But I was a good student and generally well behaved, so I kept my head down and did what I needed to do. When teacher conferences came along, my mom went in to talk to her, and this teacher told my mother that I was a braggart and that I told all the other students how much smarter I am, and other statements which made me look like a conceited little brat. The thing is, none of it was true. Not one word. To this day, I have no idea why she fabricated the lies and told them to my mother, and it still rankles me. That said, when my mom talked to me about it, I told her that it was completely made up and no such thing happened. My mom believed me 100%. She had never received any kind of report like that from any other teacher and never did for the rest of my school years. This same teacher gave me points off on a phonics worksheet because I colored a piece of cake blue with light blue frosting because my mom had just made me a blue cake for my recent birthday. At my request, I get the paper back and she marked points off for the blue cake. I asked why and she looked at me and said, matter of factly, cake isn't blue. I said yes, it is. My mom made me one for my birthday with blue frosting. She did it with food coloring. In a nasty tone, she just said, get back to your seat. Happy. Now, almost 40 years later, I'm still like, WTF, Miss B? Some people should not be working with children, and Miss B was definitely one of them. In elementary school, we were doing an assignment that involved coloring, and the teacher said to color something green. I colored it red, and the teacher came over to me and asked why I wasn't paying attention, because she had clearly stated to color it green. I told her I did color it green, and she paddled me in front on the whole class for it. Turns out I'm colorblind. We had to write a resume in my senior English class. When I listed the places I worked, the teacher docked me 2 points because she said I spelled one of the restaurants wrong by adding an E at the end. I told her that no, I spelled it correctly. It's on the sign, menus, etc. She didn't believe me and refused to give me those 2 points back. I'm still bitter about it. Gave me a bad end of year report out of pure spite because she didn't like me and thought me using computers was equivalent to messing around with toys. I quote, Zerby would rather play with computers than concentrate on schoolwork. Incidentally, I passed her class with high grades and never caused her any trouble. Every other teacher and my headmaster commented on how hard I'd worked all year and how much I'd matured. HMMPH. Jokes on her. I have a career in IT now. That playing with computers worked out. In kindergarten we had a bathroom log and the kid before me did not sign this log and put scissors down the toilet, which caused it to clog. Since I was the last one on the log, I was blamed for it by the teacher and it was never me. Dumb teacher. My sister told me a story about her art teacher who couldn't believe that one of her students who was an athlete was also a vegetarian. Apparently it's impossible to be an athlete without consuming flesh. Also, this same teacher supposedly later revealed that she's considering a carnivore diet and that she plans to not vaccinate her children. I'm mad by proxy. My 8th grade geometry teacher made us use IXL. IXL should not be used. What learning practice program penalizes you for wrong points? It's infuriating to barely get to 90 and then the questions go on hard mode and give you only 1 point but push you back 10-15 for getting it wrong. IXL is not good for anyone who struggles with math. My English teacher senior year called me retarded and said I'd never amount to anything. Now I'm her co-worker and about to be tenured. MR. Latentious wearing a black thong visible through his khaki pants every day. Like, do you bro? No judgment, but that's a bad look. Maths teacher would ask if anyone had questions. We would ask a question and she would say, I already explained that question, you should have listened. When I was in 3rd grade I was bullied by this kid whose dad was in a horrific car bike accident and had to be hospitalized for a couple years. It wasn't like hardcore abuse bullying, it was more like teasing. But it still made going to school difficult for me. He made fun of my name. I have a traditional hard to pronounce Irish name. My accent. I have a thick regional accent. And my weight. I was a chubby kid. Mostly. One day he was making pig noises at me and I snapped and yelled, "Stop being a jerk." Our teacher then made the whole class sit in a circle and talk about how what I'd done was unacceptable and bullying is wrong. Then after class she pulls me aside, tells me that even though she knows he teases me, I have to suck it up because his dad isn't well in any way, he probably likes me. Looking back I realize that the kid was acting out and needed therapy due to his situation. However, I was another kid and my teacher should not have put all that on me. In grade school I had two really close friends named Juan and Nick. Here is a picture of us that I love with me in the front. Then Juan. And then Nick. The three of us were really close and bonded of our shared nerdy interests of reading, Star Wars, and The Simpsons. We also really enjoyed drawing. I don't remember how it started exactly, but we ended up making this notebook that we passed back and forth between us. It was a comic about a guy named Tom and his cat. We would each take turns doing a strip of a few panels and then hand it over. Here is a quick drawing I did of Tom on my phone, so you can get an idea of what he looked like. The comic was about the everyday life of Tom and it was extremely mundane. It was things like Tom tries to decide on a shirt or Tom dropped the cat food on the floor. It was really dumb stuff. But the three of us found it so hilarious because we were weird kids. One day our teacher caught us with the notebook and confiscated it from us. It was a bummer because there are tons of dumb comics in that notebook. But we figured maybe we could get it back later. We waited a week and then asked her if we could get it back and she said she lost it. I'm still super salty about even after all these years because I would love to have that notebook still. Kept me from going into the guys' locker room because I was gay and said I would make the other boys uncomfortable. A teacher gave me a wrong answer because I said England and not the United Kingdom. I even showed the reading that pointed out England and she gave me detention for undermining her. I was sitting in a desk with a bunch of papers that the last person that used it left behind. One of them fell to the floor. The teacher was sick, so a substitute that looked like a Karen was there that day. I got a disciplinary report because I was throwing paper to classmates. My 11th grade English teacher docked huge amounts of points off of a major project. It was like 1/3 RD our entire grade for plagiarism. I didn't plagiarize. I simply knew the material well enough to not need to do research in order to conduct the analysis. So having non-cited analysis wasn't an indication of plagiarism. It was an indication of my own work. It took me over 10 years before I realized that I deserved the grade I got. Not for plagiarism, but because the research was the point of the project and I didn't do it. So now instead of being mad at the bullet plagiarism charge, I'm mad that she was so bad at her job that it took me 10 years to figure out what the assignment even was. In grade 6 my Spanish teacher called me stupid in front of the whole class because I couldn't roll my R and say read correctly in Spanish. I was so pissed I just got up and left the room and refused to come back for the rest of the period. I took French in high school because of it and actually was really good at French, so Senora, thanks for pushing me towards French because it actually worked out really well in my favor. I struggled in 9th grade history. He showed my brother my test scores and grades, sometimes with other students in the room. This was all behind my back and without my permission. My grades are between me and the teacher, maybe parents. They are not my brother's business and they are most definitely not the business of random kids in my brother's class. I'm now planning to become a teacher and am very passionate about this. My kids' grades will stay between me and them, and parents when necessary. If they want to tell someone, that's their choice. But it definitely will not be me. This is my first time replying on here. Hope it's okay. I used to eat lunch in this one teacher's room with all my friends. He was a little out there and sometimes went on tangents, but he was still cool. One day my friend brought up something from a cartoon and that teacher took it way out of proportion, and it started a heated debate. One of my other friends, who is very sweet and hates arguing, was calmly giving her opinion on the issue and the teacher flew into a rage, started yelling at her, accusing her of being heartless and all this stuff. At that point lunch was ending and kids were coming in for class. He didn't stop yelling, even when my friend began sobbing, and other kids were just watching it all unfold. I told the principal later on, and the only thing that happened was that teacher told us we weren't allowed in his room for lunch anymore. Fine with me. That moment still pisses me off to this day. It was 2 years ago. I will never forgive how he treated my friend. Edit. Deleted teacher's name. Didn't want to get in trouble lol. I had a teacher when I was 10 that never let me go to the restroom. Like I would ask and she wouldn't let me. So I ended up having a lot of accidents at school and my parents had to go to the school and talk to her. She still never let me go, so my parents told me to just get up and leave if she didn't let me.